based on the audiences that you're trying to reach, we can, work with a variety of different creators that speak to the communities that you need to speak to in an engaging way to open your film, sell your product, etc. Making great content for social platforms is a big part of the distribution.
Hello, Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast. And this is an Indie Talk week. And that means I have my good friend and co-founder with me, Nicholas Buggs, and our good guest, Glenn Ginsberg, with us. Nick, say hello.
Hello. It's good to be here to do it again with you, man. And of course, when we have a guest, it gets exciting. I'm always excited to, meet new people, make new friends, and of course, learn something new. So totally excited about, today's episode.
Me too. Glenn, say hello.
Hey guys. Hey Chris. Hey Nick. Thank you guys so much for having me. Quick intro. I'm Glenn Ginsberg. I'm the president of QYOU Media. We have been working, again, kind of pertinent to your podcast with the major studios and helping them market their films, really since about 2015, 2016, when we got really going. And we really focus our partners on big social campaigns, typically involving influencers that are focused on driving, scaled awareness, excitement, and engagement for films.
That is right up our alley, Glenn.
Cool.
That's perfect.
And it's good to have, someone on that actually can sort of bounce these different ideas off of us and us off of you and talk about sort of what's working and what's not working. But the big news, of course, this week, just to get us, started, is that it looks like the WGA strike has come to an end and they've agreed on terms. I think, and I want to hear your opinion, Glenn, of course, and yours, Nick, but I think that for the most part, it's the deal that the writers wanted, but I don't think anyone sort of has the courage to talk about the things they didn't get. At least I haven't heard that yet. I listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of things. And I think the general consensus is we won the negotiation. I think that's a really important talking point for them, is to just put that out in the world. And I don't think the studios and networks care too much to say they lost the negotiation. But I think that especially HBO and Paramount Plus and Paramount in general, I think they did just fine. And I don't know if anyone's ever going to say that. So I just wanted to bring that up. So Glenn, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, we had a call with one of our big partner studios today. They were, jubilant about coming to terms. It's definitely over the last few months have been a challenge for our theatrical partners. They rely so much. I mean, aside from just the writers and to actually make the product, that they need to bring to market, not having, the actors as well as just key promotional partners has, almost needless to say, caused a break in the matrix. It's, everything has somewhat come to it. They've been doing the best they can to market the products that they already have existing, but it definitely had slowed down the process and their ability to market films, which is so critical. So, we've found that, certain films have either been pushed out till next year and others weren't. So it was starting to kind of get very skinny out there in what was available in the market. So, the films that are being, released in this upcoming quarter for the holiday, there's just a lot of excitement that the actors will be back. Hopefully there'll be a quick resolution there, and that that the projects that they want to produce for next year are gonna get made.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Chris, my thought on that is that it'd be interesting to see, like you're saying, I think the writers are saying we won. I haven't heard a lot of that kind of language just yet. I think it's really just about it's flipping over, right? It's not about one party winning and the other losing. This is about what most of those contracts are about. It's about compromise so that both parties can get past this, work together, and move on. Right? That's what I'm excited about. Like, okay, let's get back to work. But of course, where my brain is, since we do a lot of indie film support, right, whether it's on the podcast or outside, it's like, well, what does this say for indie film? Right? Where is indie film positioned? You hear a lot of the writers saying, well, maybe we should start working on the indie stuff and we should be writing for indies. And you hear all of this, even the actors, right? Let's support the indies. Let's support the indies. Let's support the indies until the contract gets negotiated and signed on the dotted line. And then all that indie talk just goes away. So I'm really curious to see kind of what comes out of this and how indies might be supported or not going forward.
Yeah, it felt like all that indie talk back in the early summer and late spring was sort of a panic button push by, certain people and voices, namely Mark Ruffalo and, in the industry. And what I think as a listener of this podcast have to understand is that when you live outside of Los Angeles and outside of the studio system, those individuals do not view you as part of the industry. They do not view you as part of the movie business, because what you're able to do within the boundaries of a studio and the reason you even need unions in the first place and why that's part of it, along with health insurance and benefits and contract minimums, it makes it a real job. It makes it a job that you can have and pay your rent and take care of your family and put your kids in school. And so they don't view a lot of times the work that we would do as indies as consistent enough work to be considered a job or an in-industry job. And that's something to think about in a variety of ways, philosophically and principally, like going forward. And to your point, Nick, and look, I do think there is some cheerleading about, winning the negotiation, but I take your point, and I think that is honestly really what it's all about, is like, hey, it's over. And the way I've described it is this: we're going to have content winter in early 24, maybe even into Q3 24. And then you're going to be overloaded with content 25, 26, because all these writers on strike have been working the whole time. They just haven't had anyone to sell to. So, Glenn, what do you agree with that assessment, or do you plan on being so busy in 25 you can't stand it?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're constantly looking at what's happening right now, this quarter and next quarter, and so we've definitely have felt the deficit, and again, the kind of the stoppage, right, has definitely impacted us because there's less ability to market films when things are being halted. But I kind of throw it back to you, just not being the expert on independent films. Were a lot of new products or side projects being formed or executed during the strike?
I didn't notice that anything happened particularly based on the strike. I really didn't. I didn't see that there was this big jump in productivity or a lot of energy around the financing part of it at all, Glenn. I didn't see how things changed. I think what Nick was alluding to was like, were people that were formerly embedded in the studio system going to roll into indie a little bit more? And I really didn't see that either. I didn't see them rushing into indie spaces at all. So I think that might be what Nick is alluding to in terms of just being a little disappointed in that. Mm-hmm. And me, not disappointed, but I didn't expect anything different. I thought a lot of it was negotiating rhetoric and negotiating talking points to, window dress used as a threat. The nature of indie film is that you write a project and you try to make a project. And that's why I didn't see the strike as being necessarily as a catalyst to any new productivity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll jump in on that because, Glenn, real quick, is just that, you asked if there's an uptick, right? Well, the cool thing about indie film, it's steady, man. Yes. That's steady because you got filmmakers everywhere making film in any way possible, right? They get teams together and they make it work. right? They don't need the system in order to make it work. So it's just constant. What we did see was, the noise, and I think it's just chatter, like Chris mentioned, which is you had some of the folks that were in the studio system. Specifically, we're talking about the actors strike than the writers strike, but the actors saying they're getting waivers to work on indie projects,
Sure.
right? But I don't know that those were outside of their existing pipeline, right? I think they were expecting to work on those anyway. And then they just made sure that they weren't scabs, right? Like they just want to make sure that, like, we're not doing something that we're not supposed to do. So I think that's what that was. But yeah, that's the cool thing about it, man. It's like steady work, which is why for me, like one of my main questions for you, right? Because you talked about working with the studios and you did find that things dried up a little bit. And my question is, like, where are the indies? Why aren't they coming to you to say, hey, help us get our stuff out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. Our work has really not supported indies as much. Mostly, I would suppose, because of the kind of grassroots nature of indies, right? It is like you guys are saying. It's like I gotta tell the story. I've got to make this film, and you pull it together, and it doesn't typically have the budgets, from a similar budget to how much they cost to produce it. They can't necessarily invest in marketing it until it gets to a certain phase, right? I would equate the type of marketing that we do now, like on social platforms, equivalent to how you might invest in television advertising, which reaches a scaled audience. You may want to reach 80 million people, with your campaign, and it's an expenditure. And so, if you have a production and you have the studio support to really push out your film to, again, scaled audiences or core groups or core communities that you need to reach, that's I think a barrier. Doesn't mean there aren't ways.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, there aren't ways that indie films can leverage creators and social platforms to build their audience and build excitement, for their film. Just we're typically good at driving super scaled opportunities.
Right, you're spot on, because in indie film, you're always trying to find a marketing approach that is outside of the CPM model. Right. But still scales, right? That's the trick on the indie film side. When you're marketing for a major studio film, you don't mind the CPM model. Matter of fact, you're looking for it. You're saying, what is the biggest scale I can get? Okay. And I'm going to pay this amount per viewer that you say you have, that you can support and prove that you have. And that's what your marketing budget ends up being for that particular part of the campaign. So it's a little bit different of a game.
Yeah. It sounds like from indie, you want to see how much earned or organic views you can get, and, get your content out there in the right bits, and, find the right communities that will get really behind it, and organically grow your film, which is great.
Yeah. And you need to start early on indie film. I do think where our world's sort of Venn diagram out is this idea of influencer marketing, because there are thousands and thousands of people now that have, if not tens of thousands, Glenn, that have significant followings, but you've never heard of them. Like, I'm saying general public, you could stop someone on the sidewalk and say, who is this person? And they're like, I don't know. Well, guess what? They have 3 million followers on Instagram. And you can find that person and pay them a flat fee in many cases to just shout out your movie or do an ad for you. What do you think is sort of the most effective way in your world to use influencer marketing and to pay them? Oh, and what do you have to pay them? Sorry, that's a sort of a multi-question question. But.
I mean, look,
and it's not necessarily the number, right? But it's more like, what is the approach there?
Yeah, I'd love to know the number too, just like, or at least the type of payment. Is it flat, or do you have to pay them per post, or like, what's the most effective, I guess, way to engage an influencer marketer and then get them paid where they do a great job for your film?
Sure. That's a great question. And look, in kind of the comment you made, Chris, about there being, thousands of different creators, with significant or very targeted, audiences is the reason Q is in business, right? Mm-hmm. The thing about influencers is that, they're all independent contractors, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and really what I love about the business is, in a lot of ways is that, influencers have basically, by the way, I use creators and influencers, kind of synonymously. So if I
interchangeably, sure.
Yeah, interchangeably, I'm saying the same thing. But, when I first kind of shifted my career towards creators, it was the fact that all of a sudden there are these new platforms on, we call social platforms, started in YouTube is where we really started. And then have graduated to others like TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram, Reels, etc. But all of a sudden, there's this new class of creator that were forging direct relationships with audiences, right? And not, on a global level. And so in a sense, they were, disintermediating the traditional media companies that, you had to go to if you wanted to reach a scaled audience. And so we saw an opportunity that, hey, we could, based on the audiences that you're trying to reach, we can, work with a variety of different creators that speak to the communities that you need to speak to in an engaging way to open your film, sell your product, et cetera. And so that's really kind of where we saw the opportunity and where we could now compete against really any media entity. Right? We can go and build, and some of our campaigns will reach, get hundreds of millions of views, based on the creators that we pick. Just to kind of go a little bit back on your kind of question of like, how do we pick them? It's really an exercise, right? We don't say to our partners or, the studios, hey, we're going to try and create a community for you. Although sometimes we try, but it's more like it's a process of identifying those communities hand in hand with our partners that they really need to reach. Then we, really do deep dive on who are the creators that speak to that community. And then we take another step and go into each of those creators, kind of their library of content and say, all right, what are the creative formats that they do that are already successful, and also provide an opportunity to incorporate what our partner is trying to communicate. And then you can have a collection of various posts that are all authentic to the audience, right? And they're already proven successful and speak to this community, and you can scale it, by adding more creators with larger followings. Does that make sense?
No, it makes great. It makes great sense. And I think about, there's a lot to dig into there actually. Sure. And I'm thinking about like this idea of one, could you approach existing brands with the same model that you use with creators, since those creators tend to just want to build themselves into a brand anyway? And could you find that like a second stream of influence exists where you're finding a series of brands that align with your client's movie or theme of the movie or whatever? Mm-hmm. I think that could be an interesting thing. I'd love to hear you comment on that. And then I think the other thing is the social media game. Are you finding that you're getting, sort of adequate click action through the creators? I've always thought that social media was more like brand marketing and not like CTA sort of call to action marketing, because there's no sort of organic click through to the product if you're in film. But is it different with creator, I guess, question, an influencer marketing, where they say, go to this link, and their followers are so rabid that they're like, okay, I'll go to that link?
Yeah. Well, I would say this, right? That I think that you're right in that, especially, and look, there's so many different flavors of influencer marketing, right? There's not just one, sometimes it's about trying to get, tons of micro creators to do some small post. Sometimes it's about getting a giant creator like a Mr. Beast, right, who might get 100 million views, right? So there's just a lot of different flavors of it. Q in particular tends to work with the bigger creators out there.
I mean, Mr. Beast is an outstanding. I mean, that's example, of course, but could you really get Mr. Beast? Have you guys gotten him? Because I think he's at a place where it's not even money. Like, you can't entice him with money necessarily. He would also have to love the project, you would think.
Sure. Well, I do. I mean, yes, he definitely has the ability to pick and choose projects, but he's enticed by money.
I was just gonna say that. I was like, it's a yes and.
Yeah. I mean,
well, Jimmy's going to make $200 million next year.
Yeah, I mean,
if not more.
It's crazy. I mean, look, it's sometimes it's hard, and it helps when we're working on like a big, like if we're working on Mission Impossible or Top Gun, right? Or, again, we've worked on so many really, massive IP that's already loved. It is actually sometimes easier to have that conversation with creators. And they're like, yes, I want to be in here, right? But at the end of the day, this is their job.
Yeah.
So even though that it might be easier and there might be more attractive opportunities, it's still a job for them, and they charge. Just to kind of recap on your question. So just something that is kind of interesting too, because like you asked earlier about kind of like the metrics or the click through rates type of thing. Mm-hmm. But yes, I'd say since we work with big creators, a lot of our campaigns are geared towards that upper funnel, right? Drive mass awareness, emotional attachment, engagement around these brands. But kind of a way that's something that's really been happening over the last couple of years, and it's really heating up now, is when we started to take our creator content, especially on platforms, short form video, like on TikTok, YouTube Shorts and Reels, and using that creator content as ad served, not just the organic stuff, but ad served. We have found that those, media metrics, the view through, click through rate, conversion are significantly better than kind of those traditional, disruptive ads. And so that has been something that our partners across the board have been really, they're investing in creators, and now they're maximizing that investment by getting to all of the communities through ad serving. And it's proving to be very effective.
Yeah. That creator marketing, though, I think about that. Like you said, they're investing in creators. Yeah. And, depending on how deep down the rabbit hole of social media you go, you start to realize that some of these creators are 100% walking advertisements. Right. I mean, that's why there's a lot of them you don't know. Right. Because that is literally their job day in and day out, is to market the wares of whatever it is. It could be, hey, it's a cooking thing that I watch, but it's always the same brand of cookware, right? Mm-hmm. It might be an influencer that's really attractive. Yeah, and they're wearing the clothing brand, right? In every short, in every video. And it's like that investment in creators isn't just paying existing creators to market. It's actually creating advertising. Like, it's a whole different ballgame right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's a multitude of ways that brands are working with creators. I mean, the hope is that these creators, and I would say more of the ones that we work with, aren't just walking advertisements. I have a lot of respect for the creators who are able to look into their camera, even if they're alone at home, and have that je ne sais quoi ability to connect with thousands or millions of people, right? It's not everybody. Not everybody can do that, and it's a real ability. And so we definitely look for authentic creators that have authentic fans. I'll just add to this that one thing that's definitely happened, and we talk about this a lot with our partners too, is that for me growing up, I would watch TV and movies, right? And the thing that happens is you form these they say the parasocial relationship with the characters, right? You tune in every week because you love it. And when I say parasocial, it's that one-way relationship, right? You feel like they're part of your friend, they're your friend or part of your family, right? But they don't know you, right? But and so growing up, that was a relationship that, again, people who grew up on TV would form with that, or movies with those characters. What's happening now, especially with the younger audiences, right? Gen A, Gen Z, young millennials, the ones that were born to social, have that same relationship, but with creators, as well as with their traditional, TVs that they like. They haven't given up on that IP either, but we're seeing that bond, at least that one-way bond. And that's also very powerful when a brand wants to get involved, to get in between that, because they become that trusted source. They become that friend, if that also makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense. And you see it time and time again. I'm starting to see it even more and more, that brands really cannot placate to these creators, because the creators have wised up. They know that if they say something that's off brand, off of brand of their authenticity, if they say something that, or promote a product that is shitty, then they will lose their audience like that. The viewers, even though it may be a parasocial relationship, they're not dumb. And when they start to smell something fishy, they start to get disengaged and feel like they're part of, kind of, Nick, what you were alluding to there, they're part of their big advertisement. And once, as a viewer, you feel like you're inside their commercial, you don't want to be part of it anymore, because you wanted that authenticity that you talked about, Nick. And it is interesting too, the game that gets played, because organic is a tricky thing, and it can really work if you have the right influencer and the right creator and the right approach. But it's also not in your hands. And so if you try to do organic and the algorithm of that organic has changed or is being throttled in any sort of way, it's really going to be out of your hands in terms of what you can do from a click-through rate perspective, cost per click perspective, and just a scale perspective. Whereas if you do ad serve, they'll often help you out with the algorithm. They'll place your ad in front of even more people than their estimates before you make the payment. And I know TikTok's getting super aggressive with this. Their suite has gotten better and better. I've always viewed Snapchat as a very interesting place to do sort of brand marketing, because the people who use that site that are using it in a legitimate way are OGs. They're like committed to Snapchat. Like they post a picture a day and they're on their 900th day doing that. They have these streaks. And so I find each sort of delving into each social media site a little bit different and a little bit interesting. And I try to also experience it as a consumer, Glenn.
Yeah.
Like, what ad will I actually stop on? And why did I stop on it? And try to think about, why did it get me? What did it speak to? And the fact of the matter is that it is just a sheer numbers game, because the things that I stop on is because I am literally needing that product, or had thought about that a moment before that ad came up, or I thought about that the other day and then the ad came up. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm not aware of the webhooks. I did not think of it 1 second and then it a second ago and then it come up. I know how that works, but I'm simply saying that, like, that's why I stop. If I see a movie that I've been waiting to come out, I think Scorsese's next film, for example, when that trailer comes up, I want to watch it.
Yeah, but Chris, I think that's where Glenn is. It's like he's almost not doing ads, right?
Well, that's
it's
true.
The difference between ads and marketing, right? Where he's blending it into the influencer experience. But I'll let you expound upon that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think to your point, figuring out the algorithms is a little bit of a sucker's game, right? It's hard.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Good luck. We don't try and do that. We try and entertain. I think that, again, part of the reason that we work with big creators for our partners is that they do have an advantage. It doesn't necessarily mean that their content's going to go viral, but they have a head start. Right?
They sure do.
They have an advantage. They have, built an audience, and it's typically algorithm friendly, right? They get the big creators with big subscriber counts have the benefit of the doubt where their content is exposed to a larger audience up front than a small, even though on TikTok, as an example, anybody can go viral, right? My personal
and TikTok will load you up if you're new on the front end too for the first couple of weeks. But yeah, go ahead.
I'm sure their algorithm knows how to hook you. I am very confident in that. But I again, to Nick's point, it is really about entertainment. The thing about especially younger audiences is that they love brands, right? They still love their Nikes or whatever their favorite brands are, their upcoming movie. They hate ads. They hate disruptive ads. And, like if you look at the research, the amount of quote unquote ad blockers, is something like 80-90% up there. I don't have the exact stat, but so again, the reason why it's so key to entertain, right, and provide the audience, the communities with what they expect, and since the audiences do love brands, we are big believers that in the kind of 1 + 1 = 3. That if we can work with a creator, right, who's collaborating with a brand, and that brand isn't taking away from, but adding to and making what the creator does even better or providing them with more resources, that's when we hit a home run each and every time. And we go for that each and every time. So we really, it's not about disrupting experiences. How does the brand and the advertiser work together to bring the audience something even more of what they already love from this creator?
It's a fascinating point. I agree with you because I think about people that are our age and the fact that we love ads, or at least we used to love ads.
I was
the Super Bowl.
I love ads.
Nick, the Super Bowl.
Once upon a dream, man.
People who don't follow football will watch the Super Bowl just for the commercials.
Yeah, I think
but that's not a thing that kids do now.
No, it's dwindling because the ads aren't even as good and are as special.
That's not
they
why.
were before. For me,
I know for you and me exactly. Yeah. But the reason kids don't like it, outside of I think a dwindling interest in football in general, let's say the Super Bowl, is that ads on social media are the cousin of bots. And bots stand to ruin your social experience, whether they're in your DMs constantly, whether you're on X/Twitter and you're arguing with somebody and you realize they're not a real person, whether you're on TikTok and you get 1,000 likes and 800 of them are no username, no profile picture type accounts. I mean, bots are terrible and they're all over the place. They're unstoppable and they're asking you all kinds of weird questions. And an ad is kind of the cousin of that. And so, of course, they hate ads.
Yeah,
I don't know
because
if
like you said, it translates.
it
translates over is what you're saying. It's like the kid's social experience is on social media. They see the ads. Why would I want to see one of these ads on the Super Bowl, right, or on anything else? I totally get you.
Yeah.
I know. I can just go back. They don't want to be disrupted, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So again, why we've taken the tact that we have, right? In these more entertainment focused partnerships. And I'll just throw in one thing that's kind of a little bit different about Q than others. Okay. Again, early on, and this might dovetail kind of a little bit back to the indies film business, is that I would say as influencer marketing has kind of grown, early companies that were supporting, influencers and brands were really focused on technology, right? And building platforms that match creators and, with the right brand. And, so brands can go in and try and find that. And that's awesome and super important. And we leverage those tools. But where we kind of grew differently is that we recognized very early on that storytelling was so critical right? Where we then built kind of, again, against the grain, our own in-house studio that is providing, that sits between the brand and the creator on the brand side to make sure that all the key messaging that needs to go in, goes in. And then on the brand, on the creator side, who may be great at, again, reaching a big audience, but not necessarily on how to incorporate a brand, is helping them incorporate that message along with remaining authentic to their audience. And that has proven to be a really, really, important tool for Q, because now we have brands, like whether we're working with a Disney or a Hasbro, right, who have extremely valuable IP, right? And they just don't necessarily want to hand it over to a creator, right? One of these unknown creators that might be a great fit. So having kind of Q in the middle as a buffer to help them with the creative and, kind of have all the kind of the matrixed approvals that they need to go through is really something that's been extremely beneficial for us. So that's
speaking of those.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Speaking of those clients, and you can share specifics if you'd like, or be as vague as you'd like, or not name names or name names, but something me and Nick really want to know is what metrics that your clients are looking for from Q to, reflect whether their campaign or your campaign you've created for them was successful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it dovetails a little bit with what we were talking about earlier. So I'm having to share this, but like my background before getting into creator space was more on the media side. I worked for Comedy Central for 7 years, where I started their interactive sales team. I worked for, Marvel Comics, Universal. And, in all those companies, I was basically selling media. And so then it was really when I was at Disney, where we started working with creators. But, I saw the kind of that early on creator landscape. And, I almost forgot. Oh, the metrics. I basically applied media metrics to influencer content, to kind of influencers. And I'll just say this, like early on in the influencer space, like let's say Coca-Cola would go to an influencer and say, "Hey, I want to do collaborate with you," right? The creator would be like, "All right, it cost me $1,000 to make this video. I'll charge them $2,000." So there was no real sense of pricing, right?
Yeah.
And then I looked at it as like, well, why would it only be $1,000 when you're reaching, 8 million people? So all I've done really is try to focus, like, what is the math? What is the actual value? If brand X, if my studio was going to invest in television or pre-roll or any other marketing tactics, how does that compare to what you would get if you did a campaign with us? At the end of the day, our methodology is so strong that we are, more efficient and, we would say more effective. There's more. So the metrics that we show we look at based on their investment, how many views did they get? How many engagements? How many people, liked the video or commented on the video, shared the video? And then increasingly, what our partners want is a real in-depth understanding of the sentiment. So we know we've won when in the comments it says, "Oh, I can't wait to see that film. Even better, I'm going on September 30th."
You're right.
Early on, they would see one of our posts with influencers, and we would see if we saw in the comments, "Oh, my birthday's on August," we know we got them. Sentiment is increasingly an important part of it.
That's fantastic, because you're really doing what these AI cameras are doing in screen testing, where they're trying to get sentiment through your facial expression in a test screening. You're getting sentiment through comments and reaction on social. And it is super powerful. I was wondering how much they cared about efficiency, but as compared to sentiment, I could see that maybe efficiency is maybe tertiary or further down the list as compared to sentiment and those other things you mentioned.
Well, I mean, again, we've built a methodology. It's actually really efficient, right, and effective, right? So, that's what I like. Again, that's why. I mean, look, their studios and brands are very smart, especially their media folks. They are able to look at a plan, see the results, and know how their spend impacted their campaign. They're really good at that. And again, leveraging the methodology that we built and leveraging the right creators and big creators, at the end of the day, it comes out where it is more efficient than other ways. So it might not be less expensive, right? The out of pocket might,
Right.
they might still have to invest $500,000, whatever that investment is, but it's still going to be as efficient, if not more efficient. And again, with the added value, again, you run a spot on TV, you're not getting the comments and the likes and the positive sentiment, immediately. Not only is it efficient, it's also effective. Is the net.
What would you
that's
say
great.
is the average now, the current, and you don't have to be exact, approximation is fine, but the current sort of cost per click, if you were looking at trying
Or is
to,
that even a thing that you're looking at is the other question
you
as
have
well,
to track it though, right? Like
Yeah.
Well,
is that
amount of
inside
vagary
baseball?
that's potentially necessary in there?
I'll just say that it's really across the board, and look, we don't, sometimes we'll work with one or two creators, but typically we'll work with a bunch, and it'll, at the end of the day, in working with a bunch, it averages, but
Yep.
you can definitely have a creator that's charging hundreds of thousands of dollars for a post.
Yeah.
And you have some that are just hundreds of dollars, right? And they each of them, there may be a good reason to include them. But again, at the end of the day, we'll package something together in a way that's going to fit a budget and the efficiencies that our brands are looking for. And
You're actually nailing the point of what I was trying to get across, which is like, okay, if I paid $100,000 to one creator and $1,000 to another creator, does the math suss out where it's like the cost per click was the same because their audiences were so vastly different?
yeah, I mean, it's a big part of our plan, right? We're going to find a creator that is not only going to deliver the creative, but is also going to deliver the viewership and impact commensurate with the investment.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying about the cost per click, though, right? That's where things get a little bit confusing because it's not always a click, right? It could be the sentiment, like you mentioned, which isn't a click, it's an engagement that gives you a sense that the advertisement, the marketing effort is actually working. And that's why I said, like, it's difficult if you say, well, what's the cost per click? Well, maybe we're not actually going after clicks. Maybe we're going after reach and sentiment, which are much more difficult to measure by numbers, right? It's not a structured data, but it's more unstructured view of things.
Yeah, I mean, sure, trust me. There's all of those. Sometimes it's based off of a cost per view. Sometimes it's a cost per 1,000 views. Sometimes it's cost per engagement. Sometimes it is cost per click. So all of these different metrics are there. Typically, Q works on, since it's kind of upper funnel. It's kind of cost per view or
Exactly. That's what I was thinking of. Yep.
Yeah, cost per view.
Or CPM. Mainly because we want to be able to compare it to if I invested in TV. You talk about the Super Bowl, a Super Bowl spot may cost X and, significant millions of dollars. You may be able to then work, again with Jimmy and Mr. Beast for one, at still expensive, but fraction of the price and reach an equivalent audience. It's pretty amazing.
I heard Jimmy say recently that he does 1 billion views per month.
Yeah. And
I mean, that's insane, Glenn.
It's I mean, look, if you look at his channel, it's like every video is between like 100 and 300 million views. It's
right.
He's a true global star.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It's mind-boggling, and he just became a domain expert in the thing he was doing. He reminds me of, those concert pianists that used to come on the David Letterman show, and they'd be like 4 or 5 years old. And, Dave was always great about like bringing on these sort of savants in these different fields. And I would remember he'd bring on musicians that were kids. It's like you start that young, or like when he brought on Tiger Woods when he was very, very young, like he was 3 years old, and we watched Tiger sort of maturate into this thing. That's Jimmy. Like he just was Tiger Woods with YouTube until it sort of blew up. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but because we've talked about Barbie plenty this year, but I have to bring it up one more time because this is a marketing conversation, and what they did with the Barbie film, speaking of remarkable, was it's something that should be in business school, in my opinion.
Sure.
Because we can juxtaposition what Cocaine Bear did, right? Mm-hmm. Which was a total marketing play.
Yep.
With what Barbie did. And what I noticed with Cocaine Bear is they really, targeted the same audience that Snakes on a Plane did. And then sometimes they would skew a little bit older, but they hit you hard with the name of the movie and the word cocaine in their marketing. And the net effect of that over the span of their campaign was that it went from a curiosity to funny to sort of annoying. And I noticed that their sort of line, if you will, of sentiment, as you put it, kind of went like this and kind of dovetailed down a little bit as the movie started rolling out, and it was out 2 or 3 weeks. I'm sure it still did fine financially, or even great financially. Yeah. But with Barbie, when you compare it, what's crazy about what they were able to pull off and what Mattel was able to pull off is that when that movie was announced, there was a absolutely negative sentiment that the movie should exist. And by the time the movie, hit the theaters, they had turned the sentiment completely around, to your point about Hasbro and Disney Plus before. It's like they turned this whole thing into like, we can't wait to see Barbie. Oh, Barbie comes out on my birthday. Barbie, let's all wear pink to the theater. Yeah. I don't know how they pulled that off. That was amazing.
Well, I think in both cases, I know it's hard to compare Barbie and Cocaine Bear. almost hard to say it in the same sentence.
Well, we were hit over the head with both of them. And if you worked on either one of them, just tell us so that we can be transparent.
Look, we work with both studios. We didn't work on either of those particular films, but look, the thing, like what's always the easiest for us, or the most successful, is when the product is good, right? And both, again, I don't know if you've seen both, but
yes,
Barbie was brilliant,
Yes, it was. It was brilliant,
and Cocaine Bear was just nothing but a ton of fun, and so. So, that's the first leg in. When we have that, the marketing helps. Everyone starts to get behind it.
Yes.
Barbie was a phenomenon. Our friends at Warner Brothers they probably didn't get to sleep for, a couple of months and lead up to that, just in the amount of partnerships and momentum that it had, the way that both Mattel and Warner Brothers navigated the IP, Barbie's legacy, but also making it current and tying it into kind of the cultural. It had cultural relevance for today. It was just brilliantly constructed. There was momentum across the board. Everybody wanted to get engaged and involved in it, and it was just how fast could they move to bring all of these partners in place, and it became the phenomenon that it was. And thanks to great acting. Yeah, sorry.
I know you said the product is great, right? And that's what Chris and I always talk about that, right? Like story is king. The product's got to be great, right? But one of the things I know that, as we get later in our conversation here, one of the things I want to make sure that we close out with our audience is, how do they do this, right? So we mentioned already, like you said, like the people you work with are the studios. You're talking about, $500,000 to $1 million budgets or more. It could be $50 million budgets, depending on what you're trying to do, right? So on the indie side of creative, right? Yeah. Let's pretend that the money isn't the concern here.
Sure.
What's the process? What is the thinking that goes behind what you would want to put in a marketing campaign? And how can indie creatives even think about marketing from that media buy perspective, right? What can they do if they don't have the dollars behind this to just leverage the methodology, leverage the thinking that you have?
Yeah. So, kind of back to the algorithm piece of it. In any of our internal conversations, when we're talking about the creative part of it, it's like great creative is the solve, right? And that's, again, why we built a studio, because, making great content for social platforms is a big part of the distribution. Right. That's when the algorithms will kick in. Again, if people are watching that clip that you put in and, they watch it multiple times and they like it, and you can make some assumptions that there's part of the algorithm that will say, oh, all right, that piece of content is is being enjoyed, we're going to, share it with more people. So I think that, one is establishing, presence on these key platforms, is doing your own exercise of identifying the communities that you really need to reach, and so it's really the same process. It's like, again, whatever the independent film is, who's going to want to know about this? Who are you really trying to appeal to? Understand who the creators are. Understand, kind of the bits of content that are going to really, that in your longer film, what can you make into short form posts that will be catchy, that will pull the heartstrings? We often talk, very early in the creative process, once we've identified the audience, what is the reason? We ask, what is the reason to believe that we want to convey about this film to the audience, where they're going to go, oh, I want to see that, and in theater, because it's sparking whatever emotion, whatever is that draw that humans have for stories, right?
Yep.
So it's trying to identify that core and the community, try and, either partner with creators or share your story with them, or, try and collaborate with them, but put the content out there that you feel is going to have the most appeal, and, connect with the community that starts to show up, and hopefully it will grow and snowball.
That's awesome. That's perfect, man. We appreciate that, because it speaks to the indie community. And, like you mentioned before about influencers, they're creators, right? That's what these independent filmmakers are. They're creators. So that's perfect. Thank you.
Super respect for all storytellers, right? It's big reason why why I work in film and why I work with creators.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I can see it on your face. It's like when you say that, when you even say the word creator, you always get a smile, because like you said, it's the storytelling. There's a connection to humans, right, through that storytelling. And we love it. So thank you for that.
And I think that the thing that is sort of baked into Glenn's commentary there, that we should try to extract here, is that if you can afford a studio approach to your content creation as a way to leverage an investment in ad buys, you should do that, because you're going to get A++ output from a studio that is designed to make that content, who has A++ editors, A++ colorists, idea people, producers, actors. They can bring it all together for you. But if you can't afford a studio approach, then you have to lean on, to your point, Nick, your own storytelling and creative, and almost maybe put together something that looks similar to a Seed and Spark or Kickstarter campaign video. And then run that through a marketing firm, or even run that through a publicist, through PR, as an indie filmmaker, right? I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Like, don't try to hop in Illustrator or hop in your little app on your phone and put, graphics together and think that's going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. You think it's good enough. It's not good enough. What it takes to, like Glenn has used a few times this conversation, disrupt someone's attention on social, the content has to be excellent. It has to be so good. And it's almost like watching a singer perform. As a musician, I have a bit of frustration in the idea that so much perfection is wanted from that performer. But yet, the non-musician and the consumer of that wants every note to be hit perfectly as they're singing and as they're playing. And if they hit one note off, oh, they suck. They don't suck. They missed that one note. But no, the consumer is very fickle like that. It's like, it sucked. And so just one scene that's bad in a movie, the whole movie sucks now. And so I just think you have to keep that in mind with your creative. You hire a firm that can give you the kind of content that is going to disrupt someone's attention on social and get you the clicks and sentiment and views you want.
all great points. Find the 15 seconds of your film that strikes the chord that says, I have to go see this film. I've got to connect with this. So it's curating your own work breaking into the bits that really express what you've created, what you've sweated for to make. Is really it's almost a process of curating your own work to appeal to the audience that you need to reach.
Yeah, I love that. Being honest with yourself. I'd love to wrap on just this question. And of course, Nick, if you have other things you want to shoot Glenn's way, please don't let me stop you, of course. But I think you'll enjoy this and want to know this as well, Nick, because we talk about this all the time on the podcast, Glenn, which is that the marketing or P&A spend on a film keeps inching up and up and up as the world becomes a more and more crowded place from a media perspective.
Sure.
In all the different places where one can place their attention if they choose to. And now we think it's between 50 and 60% of the total film budget. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing? Are you seeing that our estimates are too high?
I mean,
is it genre based or are we too low?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. When I don't have the answer to, because I don't necessarily your estimates, anywhere from it could be matching, it could be half the production budget, it could be matching the entire production budget. I think
really, like Barbie, I guess. Yeah, I
think it really varies by film. But they definitely invest in media and marketing to get that adoption and excitement for the film. I don't have a percentage, and again, we work on a segment, right, of the marketing. We're not helping them with their TV, efforts or creating big events or things like that per se. Often and more often than not, we're starting to work even closer and making sure whatever our efforts are doing is lining up with other efforts to kind of create even a bigger program for them. I don't have a specific answer. I do know that the overall digital marketing and influencer budgets have been increasing steadily year over year as influencers and kind of social have become, kind of, you talked about TV, like the place where as other media platforms like TV have become more and more fragmented and harder to reach an audience, social, especially if you're trying to reach those key younger audiences, is the place to reach a scaled audience with impact. The thing about marketing, kind of the truism that's always said is that marketing dollars follows where the audience is. And, social is where the audience is. We just so happen to have a really solid methodology in impacting audiences, whether it's at scale or specific communities. So that's our advantage, but that's where the audience is. And that's why we're seeing commensurate spending against it.
And when you say that, just to follow up on that, what you're basically saying, to decode it a little bit, is that you have relationships with creators that are either exclusive or near exclusive, where you can count on them to sort of partner with brands when you call them and then offer them a particular budget. Is that, am I hearing you right when you say what QYOU's advantage is?
We definitely have very strong relationships with creators, agents, managers, right? We've been doing this for so many years, and there are certain creators that we've worked with many, many times because they're professional. They show up, they produce great content. But the truth is that, and kind of what I was saying a little bit earlier, how all these creators are independent contractors, right? Yep. We consider ourselves kind of brand first, meaning that, if we work with Sony on Father Stew, we may go after a very specific set of creators that reach a very specific community. So we will basically build the creator profile for each campaign based on the brand's needs. So we worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, maybe different set of creators than, for Top Gun, and so we curate the right creators to reach the communities that are important
and what I heard you say was niche and numbers, right? Both of those are factors in what you're doing, and that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Nick, we keep advocating this thing where it's like, look, if you're making a $1 or $2 million indie film, you're going to now need $1 million minimum to go into marketing. And maybe a segment of that is influencer marketing. But whatever your curated approach is, you need 50% of that budget. And if you can raise $2 million from an equity investor and the taxpayer and patrons, then you can raise $3 million. You know, there's no reason you can't. And the equity investors, and this is the tricky part, the equity investors that put up the $2 million for the movie will deeply appreciate and respect the fact that you want to make their money back by raising an additional $1 million to market it. If they understand.
And
that's
if
what
their
we've been
desired
advocating.
outcome is a financial return on their investment, right? Where I do believe that also in independent film, there are other aspects of ROI, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on what they're trying to get out of it.
Yeah. I mean,
they could give to the arts and get a tax write-off. We'll do that too.
That's a great sentiment. They should be, behind that project and trying to give it every possible chance to succeed. But yes, whether it is financial return or a story that just must be told, it's important. Let's give it the best chance that it's got.
Yeah, and investing is about placing your dollars behind your deepest conviction. And if your deepest conviction is this story, as an investor, then put everything you can into it and make your bet. There's no such thing as like sliding half a chip in on a hand. Like you have to go all in on the hand and not tiptoe around and pretend that you're not all in or whatever. Like with any type of investment, you're taking your dollars and putting it behind your deepest conviction, and that's how you win, even if you have to lose a few times to get there. So this has been incredible. This has been fun. I learned so much. I think we packed in a semester's worth of film school education, marketing education in 1 hour of podcasting, Nick, just now. Yeah.
And I think, again, Chris, is what we talk about, right? Is having these conversations, right? And really connecting with our audience about, some of these things that they can do for themselves, because again, they're not necessarily going to have the financial resources, but the importance behind marketing at any level doesn't go away.
For sure.
Right? Just because your budget is low or even nil, it's like, no. It's still very important. And then what you said, Glenn, is so spot on. Just saying that use the content that you've created, curate content from your content as a means of marketing. And that's perfect, especially, the lower the budget, I think the more you have to rely on that. Really? I think the higher the budget, you're still relying on it, but now you can incorporate other factors. And I think that's perfect.
Yeah. There are plenty of methods that you can, even with a shoestring budget, can still employ to start engaging audiences. And you just got to take that effort and do it.
Awesome. Yeah, spot on. Yeah. So Glenn, before we finish up, we got to make sure people know how to get in touch with you, hire you, engage with you. All the good things. So can you tell us where we can find you on social media, find you on the internet, or even contact you to hire you?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll give two. You can go to my company's website, and I'm going to spell it out because we've kind of our name. So the Q, so the Q.com, but it's spelled THE, the Q spelled QYOU.com.
Got it.
You can get to our homepage, or Glenn Ginsberg on LinkedIn. Just link in with me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. We face the same thing, Glenn, all the time. People will spell bonsai with a Z, or they'll want to go bonsai.com instead of bonsai.film. Right. And that's just one of those things where we thought we were being clever on both accounts, and it just turns out that it's not perfect for everybody. Yeah. So we totally empathize with that situation, but I think it's a very, very cool website. So that again is THEQYOU.com, the Q.com. Glenn, this has been great. And everyone listening, do go find him. He is a super pro and a superhero in the marketing space. reach out to him. Is there like a project you refuse to take? Is there a floor that people need to know about just before I say all that?
Yeah, basically the only things that we really wouldn't consider is, guns, drugs, and porn. That's really the three areas.
Yeah.
Gun, drugs, and porn.
Wait. And he's going to also say, and don't bring me garbage, right? Like we got to have standards about what we put out here with these influencers. We do like to work
with, of course, films that have that are a great product, of course. But those are, otherwise, look, we're equal opportunity marketers. We'll market to any groups, and we're open to a variety.
And a variety of price points too, right? Is really what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
His audience can afford it.
If you guys see a great project, I'm happy to always, lend my thinking.
Oh, that's awesome. We appreciate that.
That's huge. That's huge. I love that. So anybody that's interested in Glenn, you know where to find him, you know where to reach out to him, but you can also now, based on what Glenn just said, reach out to us and we can help you by reaching out to him. And if you want to reach out to us, that's really easy. You can email us at contact@bonsai.film. You can also find us on across social media at _Bonsai Creative. You can follow this podcast at _Make It Podcast across social. You can reach out to Nick directly at Nick at, I guess it's an email address. So Nick@bonsai.film. And by the way, Nick, I noticed you're wearing that gray shirt. I was also wearing a gray t-shirt, and at the last minute, I changed into this polo because I thought we've got Glenn Ginsburg on. I can't wear this gray t-shirt, but you look great in it, and I should have wore it, and we would have twinned out today. And I blew it.
It's all good. It's all
my
good.
bad. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on X/Twitter at Flame in Your Heart. Your is spelled UR, so Flame in Your Heart, or you can just search for Chris Barkley, and I will come right up. Last but not least, go to bonsai.film, where you can discover all of our marketing services as well, where we actually curate our own little band of creatives as well to execute your plan. Full marketing mix so it's a little bit different than what we talked about with Glenn, where he's doing that segment. And we do typically work with indies as well. So go there, check out services page, bonsai.film, and take a big step towards your filmmaking success, or reach out to us and we'll get you in touch with Glenn as well, where he can get you involved with the best content creators around. You also might go to our website and see some things about our newsletter. That's at bonsai.film/subscribe. It's a wonderful little newsletter that we do. It's super positive, and we just bring you the best goodness around independent film, the things that are important to you every 2 weeks. It's free, and you can join today at bonsai.film/subscribe. And so after that enormous diatribe, I will give it to you, Nick, to leave us with the credo.
Yeah, he's going to pitch it to me for one of the favorite parts, because, the credo is very important to us because it speaks to what we try to do for the community and everything that we do, whether it's the podcast or our engagement with folks outside in the real world. And that is be better, be creative, be engaged.
And thank you for listening. Nick, talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. We'll do it again. This is great. It's always fun.
Glenn, you're the best. Hope we can do this again.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate you. All right.
Peace.
Bye.